Strikers. BlueLock's whole objective and the point of every single arc in the series to create the single best striker in Japan. With so many players fighting for the spot to become the sole winner of BlueLock and lead Japan to victory, we'll be answering the biggest question in the series: who will be BlueLock's starting striker? Surprisingly, there was no other videos on this topic, so we're fresh here. You know your boy's gonna cook up something nice for y'all. We'll be going over the players who are in contention for the striker position, their feats, debates between them, and everything to do with the striker spot to give the most calculated answer on who will be BlueLock's starting striker. Again, BlueLock's whole point is to create the best striker. The U20 is right around the corner and the NEL is about to end, so this is a perfect time to settle this everlasting debate. This is super important because the U20 is going to be the longest arc in BlueLock, probably over 100 chapters, but something that won't take that long is hitting that subscribe button. Do it now because I'll be here to cover all of it and making theories just like this on everything BlueLock. Let's get into it now though. The first thing we need to establish is who actually has a chance of being the starting striker. Igaguri isn't going to be the starting striker, neither is Nanase. Let's put on our thinking caps and actually see who has a chance. I made a theory before this about what happens after the Neo Egoist League, and I mentioned how we'll be deciding positions or having a striker selection before the World Cup. There are only a few players who came to mind when talking about the striker position. Your favorite character may not make the list. It's a very cutthroat decision, but taking into account feats, skills, and also plot, the most important one, the 6 players I think are in contention for the striker position are Kunigami, Nagi, Shido, Barou, Isagi, and Itoshi Rin. Those are the 6 players I think have a chance at the starting striker spot or being the #1 striker. Honorable mention for the spot is going to be Bachira. He honestly has the skills and ambition to fight for the starting striker position, but myself and a lot of other people think he's better as a midfielder or a winger to take advantage of his dribbling, passing, and team playing abilities. So Bachira as an honorable mention. Now I'll be ranking from least likely to be a starting striker to most likely. There's also some other things I have to clarify as well. This is the U20 starting striker, not the final World Cup starting striker, if we do have one. I also doubt that this U20 starting striker, the decision I made, the #1 pick, will be the best at the end of the series, which makes it an even more interesting debate. This is currently who will be the starting striker or best option going into the U20 World Cup, not the end of the series. So #3, for example, could be #1 at the end, or #1 could be #3. You get the idea. Again, as well, we have to be taking into account plot, development, and their character as a whole. Like, what's their objective? Do they have rivals for the end of the series? Stuff like that. And out of the 6 I mentioned, I think the least likely but still has a chance is going to be Kunigami. Kunigami has everything a striker needs, from mentality to his physicality and skills, as well as being a copy of Noel Noah, but when compared to the rest, he completely lacks in feats. Every player on this list has beat out one another somehow, some way, but Kunigami has yet to do that with anyone, including the person who sent him to the wildcard. Plot and development wise as well, the only goal he has pushing himself is the fact that he wants to be the #1 player, which is the same as everyone else, but he doesn't have a main or consistent rivalry for the rest of the series, like Rin with Sai or Isagi with Kaiser. The only thing is his rivalry with Shido, which will probably reach its peak in the PXG game. After he gets his development, there isn't any technical need for him to be the #1 striker, besides his own selfish needs, if that makes sense. Compare that to someone like Isagi, who still has rivals like Kaiser, who is the lead striker for Germany. It just makes sense plot-wise to put him over Kunigami in that position. Even with his full development and buffs, it would just move him up 1 or 2 spots, if any. He's not a main rival to Isagi, so plot-wise, it doesn't make any sense for him to take away that spot from the main character. But I still do think Kunigami is a good offensive option. We've seen him score 2 goals in the NEL, which is more than Nagi, and he also has the best physique out of everyone on the list. He also has a super egotistical mindset to fight for that #1 spot. Even then, I'm still going to put him at the #6 spot. So we went over Kunigami's feats, his standout traits, and also his importance to the plot. Again, we'll be discussing that for every character so the debate makes sense. Going into #4 and 5, it's probably the hardest debate on this list, even more than #1 and 2, which doesn't make sense. But I think in my opinion, the 4 and 5 spots are between Shido Riise and Nagi Seishiro. You might be wondering, Hiryo, there is no way this washed up breakfast skipper isn't #5 due to his current performance. And yes, this is true, but we're also taking into account development. Nagi getting his ego back and the fact that we haven't seen Shido work together with the BlueLock boys yet makes it a hard debate specifically for the starting striker spot. Nagi becoming more individualistic, which is what he lacks, and Shido using team play, which is what he lacks. That's basically the deciding factor in this debate. Shido is pretty much a cheat code for goals, and so is Nagi, but as a starting striker that can synergize and make use of everyone's abilities, they're not what Japan needs or specifically what BlueLock needs, since BlueLock has been building and developing every single character. So that's why I put them a little lower on the list. dangerous, but they still have a chance and definitely have the skills to become the starting striker, so let's go over the feats. Nagi has such a high potential with his weapon and getting a new ego. A fully focused Nagi against every single player on the pitch is super dangerous. He's pulled off one of the best goals in the NEL as well, but unfortunately, that is his only goal we've seen, which makes him the lowest in goals on this list. Training with England and Chris Prince, his physicality also increased, but nowhere on the likes of Barou, Rin, or Kunigami. His flaws are obviously not having an ego currently, and he can't make use of everyone else's abilities like Rin or Isagi, for example, but trapping works well with other weapons or synergizes well, if that makes sense. And in Shido's case, he's a bad shot taker who somehow finds his way to a goal anyway, powerful enough to carry the U20 game and also be considered as a joker card to replace the striker position and flip the tides of the pitch. On top of that, his game IQ is higher than Nagi's, as seen on multiple occasions. His physicality, I would debate, is on the same level as Nagi. Not as bad as Isagi, but not as good as others like Kunigami, for example, so I guess they're equal in that compartment. We haven't seen any drastic improvements from the U20 to the NEL though. I think Shido is still that same demon who can make a goal from anywhere in the goal box, but he lacks in team play by focusing on what he wants instead of the most optimal play. And with both of them about to fix their major flaws, Nagi developing an ego and Shido with team play, I'm gonna make the hard decision and put Nagi at number 5 and Shido at number 4. The reason for this is I think Nagi's ego isn't clearly defined. It may be an individualistic ego, like he wants to crush one player on the pitch, like how he did with Isagi, but Shido learning team play is pretty much confirmed since him and Rin are playing on the same pitch now. For the future, Nagi's ego may not be exactly helpful for the starting striker spot, where Shido learning to become a team player will help him have a higher chance, if that makes sense. I may be wrong though, and maybe Nagi's ego can take better advantage of others, but since we have no confirmed development or anything like that, I think this is where the ranking will be. Number 3 is going to be the king, Barou Shoei. Now I think numbers 3 to 1 have a really close chance of being that starting striker. Each one of them have a huge debate without having any huge flaws, like the others I mentioned before. I'm not even trying to glaze here, but it's like Barou was born to be a striker. He has a super egotistical mentality to become number 1. His skills allow him to score goals and also move up on his own, and he learned how to work in a system, well, make a system work around him rather. He can move up and beat players in 1v1s using his chop dribble. He has his unpredictability with his devouring, and his shooting range and accuracy on top of that. If BlueLock wanted to utilize one specific player's skills, Barou and Shido come to mind instantly, and between who you'd want to start, which is the whole debate, I would say Barou is a better option due to the upgrades we got for him in the NEL, and that's why he's above Shido. One of Barou's biggest flaws was that he was unwilling to work with others, just like Shido, but by having experience in the Uber system, Barou can better utilize other players, and was even willing to go back and defend just to help the team. He can also adapt to his teammates really well, in my opinion. We see this in the U20 match when he adapted to Rin in that infamous Rin is just another Isagi moment, and also in the NEL with Snuffy's design change, utilizing Nico, Lorenzo, and Aiku when he turned the tides of the game. And Barou's feats are absolutely insane, probably the best on this list, having 5 confirmed goals, maybe 7, which makes him either the highest or second highest goal scorer in the NEL. He probably has the second best physique on the list behind Kunigami, and also has a better offense and shoot stat than Kunigami and Nagi as well. And honestly, the only flaws for Barou is that I don't think he would mix too well with others still, or that he can't utilize others as well as Isagi or Rin can. It's a very minor thing though, and his offensive abilities definitely make up for it. I think 3 is a perfect spot for Barou. I think this is where he's going to end at the end of the NEL as well. There are 2 players who are arguably higher than him due to plot, but Barou is going to be my number 3 pick. Alright, so now we are at the debate of the number 1 and 2 spot, the 2 people who have the most likely chance of being the starting striker. Between our main character Isagi and his main rival Rin, an age-old debate, but we got to take into account their development for the future and the plot. Isagi as the protagonist is obviously built up to be the number 1 striker at the end of the series, but we also have Rin who has the abilities to be the number 1, and he still has that development in the future with his brother Itoshi Sai. Both of them still have goals they need to accomplish in the U20. Isagi needs to beat Kaiser and Rin needs to beat Sai, so plot-wise it makes total sense for it to be either of these 2. Going into feats now, Isagi is improving at rates that seem unfair. His spatial awareness or metavision is on the same level as new Gen 11 players, and the fact that he can use it the whole game is crazy. He's also improving his overall stats with currently 2 goals and 3 or more assists as well. What I don't see a lot of people talk about is the fact that his metavision pretty much allows him to increase his overall playmaking abilities, even when it comes to unrelated stuff like shooting or dribbling, for example, since he can find the best routes for his current abilities. He doesn't need to be the best at dribbling like Batra or getting through the team like Barou with his own individual skills, because his metavision allows him to compensate for that. By using other players' skills like Raichi, Hiyori, or Corona, for example, it helps his lackluster abilities be used to their fullest potential, on the level of others with raw talent like everyone else on the list. And that's why Isagi fits the striker position super well in my opinion, because specifically his metavision and the way he uses it allows allows him to compensate, use others, and score goals with it. Isagi also has plot on his side, being the main character, and he's proven to be a good leader who can make use of other people's abilities. Now for Rin, he is currently and arguably has been the number 1 in Blue Lock since his introduction, as a complete all-rounder with some of the best kick accuracy we've seen in the series. He's also shown himself to be a capable leader, taking advantage of every single one of his teammates and opponents' abilities, as seen in the second selection and the team captain during the Blue Lock versus U20 match. He can sync up with player, as we saw with Isagi, and most recently with Nanase and Tokimitsu, and by joining PXG, he buffed every single one of his stats in physique, body balance, trapping, dribbling, and shooting. Rin also has his Destroyer mode, which destroys his opponent's weapons, a super strong ability which we still haven't seen too much of, but I still feel the need to mention it. Rin currently has the highest or second highest goals in the NEL as well, with 6, also being the ranked 1 player. Even though he isn't the main character, he is still Isagi's main rival in Blue Lock, so it makes sense out of all the other characters on this list for him and Isagi to be fighting for that striker spot. Overall, Rin's specs are better than Isagi's, but Isagi compensates that by using other players and also his metavision as well. So now it's a measure of Isagi using other players, plus his own abilities, and Rin's overall talent and what he offers to a team. So finally, I believe the most likely starting striker for the Japan U20 team will be Itoshi Rin. This is because his overall talent beats Isagi, even when he uses others to compensate for it. The fact that he also has a major plot development, going against and proving himself as worthy to Sai during the World Cup, and he is also Isagi's main rival. I do think Rin is almost impossible to reach skill-wise, especially in that short time frame before the U20, even with the striker selection after the NEL. But in the future, I do think Isagi, as our main character, will use the U20 and the arcs after to surpass and eventually become the lead striker for Japan and the number 1 striker in general. This is his story after all. That will be a whole nother theory as well, because I do think there will be 2 World Cups. It makes a lot of sense plot-wise, there's a lot of evidence for it, and we know Isagi wants to be the number 1 striker in the world, so he'll have to go against world-class talents and not just the U20. But the U20 is what Blue Lock has been building up this whole time, and the starting striker is just as important for it, so that's what I personally think who has the highest chance of being the Blue Lock starting striker. I could probably go into more detail about development and specifically Rin in my opinion and why he's my choice, but I do think that should be a video for another day, as Sai plays a huge role in it and we're just discussing the starting striker. Let me know who you think will be the starting striker, or if you think I should put anyone higher or lower. Everyone has their own opinions, so let me know. If you watched to the end, thank you guys so much for watching. My name's Hiryo, and I'll see you guys next one.